So let me welcome all of you who are here with us at the next lecture under the project Trends of Nature Conservation. Today's speaker is Pavel Bečka, who is employed both at the Czech Šumava National Park Administration as well as Bavarian Forest National Park. And he is a coordinator of their international cooperation because those two projects are cross-border. Let me shortly introduce Pavel because he studied both economics and also biology, economics in the Czech Republic and biology in Germany. Since 2008, he has been working at the Šumava National Park Administration with 2-year-long break, which is quite important, especially in my view, because it's also about the international cooperation. He worked 2 years from 2013 till 2015 for EuroNatur, which is a German non-governmental organization, really very, very active at the West Balkan countries in the nature conservation. But today's lecture is called, or the title of the lecture is Cross-Border Cooperation of National Parks. So Pavel will introduce us what is 25 years of cooperation among them, what are strengths as well as weaknesses, and what is the benefit of such a cooperation. So Pavel, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Michael. So my today's presentation is about our 2 national parks that we have in Böhmerwald, on Bavarian Forest, and in Šumava. Šumava National Park and Bavarian Forest National Park. And the name of my talk is Quarter Century of Cooperation, even though the Šumava National Park is already 32 years old. But as I will explain later, the cooperation was not working the whole time. So I will start a little bit with history of both national parks, then what we have in common, about the challenges and goals that we have. For those people who shouldn't know where these national parks are, here you can see the border between Germany and, in this case, Bavaria and Czech Republic. Our national parks are quite in the middle between Prague and Munich, so it's really touristic venue for many visitors from these big cities. In Šumava, as we call it in Czech Republic, or Böhmerwald, as we call it on the Bavarian side, and in Austria, there were already some smaller nature protected areas in the past. The oldest one in this area is the Virgin Forest Bovine from 1858, but the large-scale protected areas were established later. The first one was Šumava Landscape Protected Area from 1963. So just for people who don't know anything about this, it was in that time it was the biggest protected area in Czech Republic. So 1970, Bavarian Forest National Park was established. It was the first national park in Germany and in Bavaria, of course. Then after the changes, after the Velvet Revolution, Šumava National Park was established on a part of the landscape protected area. And then, because probably on the Bavarian side, they thought that the Šumava National Park is too big. They enlarged the Bavarian Forest National Park, and there was also a second enlargement in the last year. And so Bavarian Forest National Park is now the biggest forest national park in Germany, but still 2.5 times smaller than Šumava National Park. nature protection in these mountains is not only protected by the state laws, but also by European laws. So we have big protected areas according to Natura 2000. So both national parks are SPA and also protected areas for habitats. And on the Czech side, not only the national park, but the whole landscape protected area. And also here on the east-south part, we have also another connected Natura 2000 sites like Boletice and Blanský les. On the Bavarian side, you can see some smaller protected areas, and also in the Austria part of Böhmerwald is one fauna and flora habitat called Mühlviertel. Why are the protected areas on the Czech side so big? It's, of course, you know the history, so it's because of the Iron Curtain that was built there after the communist putsch in 1948. So you can see here the fences, the electric fences that were built after the Second World War, I mean after the putsch, and then later they were moved a little bit, but still the whole area was prohibited. You could go there only with if you had some permission to get there. And many villages and settlements that were in this area disappeared. So you can see here some of them. Only in Šumava National Park, 60 villages and settlements disappeared. So the Šumava National Park Administration made a small project to remember these villages. You can find them in the neighborhood of these villages, and where you can see pictures from the early days and how it looks now. I will talk a little bit also about the differences between our two national parks. So Šumava is bigger and has also more open land, like pastures and meadows that were the deforested land around the villages. The villages disappeared, some of them, or almost most of them, but the open land is still there. So Šumava National Park has not only forest, it's about 80% of the national park, but also open land that takes 20% of the national park area. In Bavarian Forest National Park, there are only 2% without forest. 1% are so-called Schachten. It's the rest of the pastures that they had in the forest. Both national parks are protecting the same nature. As you can see here, there you cannot really see the border between these two countries. One could think that this stripe is the border, but it's not the border, it's the scar from the Iron Curtain. There was one of the fences, but the border is here more left in this picture. And we need such both national parks to protect our nature, because many of the species that we have here, they need a large space. For example, the lynx that was killed off in the 19th century, in the second half of the 19th century, and reintroduced in the 80s. So both national parks, they do common monitoring since 2009. So not in the whole national park Šumava, but in the whole Bavarian Forest National Park and on the opposite side of the border, and where we put photo traps, and then we count how many animals were caught with these photo traps. So here are some numbers up to lynx year 21-22. So you can see here the numbers of the animals, the adult animals, and then here the resident females with young ones, and so-called floater that are just passing through the area, and here the density per 100 square kilometers. So you can see that there was some increase like 5-6 years ago, and then last year the numbers dropped down. We will see how are the numbers from the last season. Another iconic species is capercaillie. In Šumava, there is the last population of capercaillie in Czech Republic, and one of the last population in West Europe, outside the Alps. Also, both national parks works together by monitoring. So here you can see just where we found animals, or not animals, but the droppings that we used for the monitoring. We collected them and then sent them to the laboratory, and from these data we used some models to count how many animals we have. So here are the numbers from the first common monitoring that happened like 12 years ago. For the whole area we counted about 550 animals. Then 6 years later we counted 600, more than 600 animals. In this winter we did the monitoring again, but we do not have the numbers yet. Another animal that was killed off in the past and came back by itself is the wolf. The first pair was spotted or trapped with our camera in 2016 on close to border, Bavarian Czech border, and these animals, they had the next year 2017, they had, after 150 years of missing young wolves in the area, they had young ones. And also there we do some monitoring, but it's not as easy. I mean, it's not easy with the lynx, but you cannot recognize the animals, so you have to collect droppings and stuff like that. It's not just about the photo traps, but as you can see here from the last winter, on this photo, you can see already seven animals who caught red deer. And with this monitoring here, we know that like 2 years ago, it is the wolf years up to 2020, 21, 22, that we have like at least 3 packs and 2 territorial territorial pairs. Another animal that is new again in Šumava is the beaver, and it's not easy to spot one, but you can see his traps and the trees that he cut it down everywhere almost in Šumava. The first came back in the 90s, and they were disappear again, and then in the end of the 2000s they came back, and now they are, I think if the number is right, about 90 territories only on the Czech side, not counting the Bavarian side. They can really change the landscape. So this picture was taken from the railway station under the Spičák. In the past, there was just a small creek, like 1 meter wide, and now you have these ponds there that are more than 30 meters wide. Here you can see the work of the beaver, but the beaver didn't cut the trees. It was done by another animal. Not that this animal cut the trees, but he killed them. It killed them, and this animal is maybe the most famous animal for Šumava and Bavarian forest. It's the European spruce bark beetle that can influence the forest in large scale like this. These pictures in the Middle Europe we are not used to see, so it was not easy to deal with it. So even we do a lot of monitorings. It was not easy to influence or to speak with the public or even with politicians about it, because people thought there will be no forest anymore, but it's not true. So, but the forest has changed a lot. So here, from some monitoring that I was involved in, so this is not in the national park, but in the landscape protected area. It's the car over the Black Sea, Černé jezero. So, well, 2011 there was still like old-grown forest, and when we went there like last year, the forest was totally different. These two pictures are from the same spot, and these two pictures are also from the same spot. So here still you can recognize maybe this tree is this one, or this tree is this, and these two trees are here. On the next two pictures, you cannot recognize the monitoring plot again. It's almost impossible. So yeah, this is picture taken in a visitor center in the Bavarian Forest National Park. So it's a model of the bark beetle, and it has some horns like a devil and sound saint, because some people they think that it's devil, other think no, it's not a saint, but it's an animal that is common in the forest, and in our forest that is not managed forest on the large plots. It works, and the forest comes again. So we did a lot of monitorings So I could talk about numbers, but I think that the pictures that I will show you now speak for itself. So the last picture was taken 2015 because the pictures after that it was only a green wall again. So it was a little bit about the nature in Šumava and Bavarian Forest National Park, how to the goals that we have. So both national parks, according to the law, have the same goals. So environmental education, research, visitors, and also preservation of the valuable culture and historic areas. As we have these Schachten or the pastures and meadows on the Czech side, and of course nature conservation. Both national parks, or both national park administration started the cooperation already after the Šumava National Park Administration was established. This is our first common project from 1992. This pavilion you can still see at the border in Bučina, Buchwald, where there are some information about both national parks and about the Iron Curtain and European Green Belt. This photo is from archive of the first director of Bavarian Forest National Park, Mr. Bieber-Ritter. Both national parks or ministries, nature protection ministries, signed memoranda for cooperation. But the problem is that these memoranda, as you will see later, they are not as strong as some contracts or agreements. So they were more like political. In that time, it was more like political statement that we would like to work together, but not really strong. Both national park administration, because they work together, got a transboundary park certificate of the Europark Federation. So that is something that we are proud of. And also the two directors that we have now, Mr. Leibel and Mr. Hubeni, signed agreements about the cooperation of both administration in research, environmental education, and designation of core areas. In everyday work, we have some education projects like meetings for school classes when Czech school classes are going to Germany and vice versa, or they meet each other. We do a lot of common field guide books and other things like calendar and brochures. This one is with this is brochure that we did in 3 languages about dead wood. We have also bigger projects, Interreg projects, where we are trying to do things that we are not able to pay from our budget. So it's like big monitorings project about all different kind of species, from fungi to plants and beetles, red deer and stuff like that. But we do also bigger and environmental education projects like these ones that we called Waldwerkstatt or Lesní díla, forest workshops, where we build like space where these, for example, these school classes can meet. The biggest project is for the restoration of mires. You could see that for the Interreg projects, we got like 9 million euro, and this project has almost 6 million euro for 7 years. In this project, we restored mires mainly on the Czech side, but not only on the Czech side, but also on the Bavarian side, but outside the national park. So in all these projects, not only the National Park Administration cooperate, but also another institution, NGOs, and others. Now I will talk a little bit about the challenges that we are having that can influence this cooperation. So Bavarian Forest National Park, you can say that from 1997, they were like clear goals for the national park. Šumava National Park didn't have such clear goals and still does not, or at least it has now clear goals, but the timeline is not as clear as on Bavarian side. Bavarian Forest National Park meets the criteria of the IUCN Category 2 already since the last year. Šumava National Park still doesn't. These 4 numbers, they maybe show this problematic at the best. So usually I ask people in the when I do such a presentation, but online it's not as easy, so I will explain it. So Bavarian Forest National Park is 53 years old. Šumava National Park is 32 years old. But in Bavaria, there were only 3 directors. On the Czech side, we had already 10 directors, and even when I count right, even 19 ministries of environment. So, and it's not only about the change of directors of the ministries, but with almost each director, also the political situation in Czech Republic has changed considering the Šumava National Park. So I found one slide in the presentation of Mr. Leibel, who was trying to explain how was the cooperation working between these 2 national parks. So you can see in the beginning, after the establishment of the national park, there was like we had to know each other, and so the cooperation was working. But then 1995, I will talk about it later, big bark beetle outbreak happened in Böhmewald, in Bavarian forest and Šumava, and then the cooperation was not really good in that time. Then on the Czech side, the situation improved. So it was in the time of the memoranda, and also for the very first time, also the Czech side was thinking about the motto, let nature be nature. That is the motto of Bavarian Forest National Park. But then after the elections in 2009, and with the new directors, the cooperation was stopped. Mr. Leibel, who became director in 2011, said he will not work together with such a national park. He doesn't want to give them some alibi, because in that time, Šumava National Park said that the national park shouldn't be category 2 national park, or something between, some hybrid between. Also, the director Strassky returned the European diploma, or so in that time the cooperation was stopped and it was not working. There was no cooperation between the two national park administration up to 2014. Then again, 2013, a new election, new Minister of Environment, new director, and finally both national parks have the same goals and started this common project I was talking about, and the cooperation is working since then very well. This situation on the Czech side influenced also the management in the national park. So here I will talk a little bit about the zonation on the Bavarian side, but also on the Czech side. I could show you picture from maps almost from every year, because it was on the Czech side, it was changing a lot, but I had to choose only a few years. So 1991, when Šumava National Park was established, there were 3 zones, like the first zone, 25%, and then the villages, and the second zone between it. In that time, Bavarian Forest National Park had already almost 75% nature zone. That means no management at all. And this buffer zone and these red ones are the recreation zone. So the first nature zone in Bavarian Forest National Park was established 1983 when the minister Eisenman said that at least 50% of the national park will be nature zone. And it was done in the summer, and 14 days or 2 weeks later, a big storm happened with wind throws everywhere in the national parks, also in the nature zone. So if this storm would have came like 2 weeks earlier, maybe even Bavarian Forest National Park wouldn't have this nature zone. But luckily, it was 2 weeks later. So they really said, okay, we want to have these nature zones. We will not work with these wind throws in this nature zone. On the Czech side, when the bark beetle outbreak happened in 1994, we got scared and we changed the zonation. From this 25% first zones, we had only 13% in these small islands. So the National Park Administration did the worst thing that it could, and was trying to fight the bark beetle everywhere in the national park. Later, even in the first zone, the only something like a nature zone was in the Lusen Valley, because it was too late to fight the bark beetle there. 1995, on the Bavarian side, a discussion started about the enlargement of the national park. But because of this bar beetle outbreak, it took almost 3 years to establish the national park there. And because of the bar beetle, also in this new part of the of the Bavarian National Park, there were something like development zones. So the decision was made that for the next 30 years, the nature zone will be enlarged like 1 year after another, and in the development zones, the bar beetle will be fight it again. On the Czech side, 1999, in the Trojmezní prales, Virgin Forest Trojmezní, when also in this first zone, the National Park Administration started to fight the bar beetle. Some NGOs and researchers and scientists made a blockade, and forced the administration to stop the cutting of trees in this so-called virgin forest. So the first, and then the people in Czech Republic started to think, or the administration itself started to think about to have some real nature zone, but it took almost another 10 years, or it took 10 years to have something like nature zone. On the Czech side, we call them non-intervention zones. So you can see in the new part of the Bavarian Forest National Park, there were already some bigger nature zones. On the Czech side, we got something like about 30% of the nature zones or non-intervention zones with different managements, but the main thing was that we were not fighting the bar beetle there. It happens after the storm Kirill. It was 2007, because there were more than 800,000 cubic of dead wood or windrows, and if the administration would cut all the trees and transport them outside the national parks, there will be like big clear cuts, and no national park really wants to have it. But 2010, after the election, these non-intervention zones were decreased to 20%. As I have already told you, the zonation changed almost every month. So I will not show you all these pictures. And then against the election 2013, and so in 2016, the zonation looked like this. These non-intervention zones are green, and some of them with hunting, some of them without hunting. Then one important thing happened in 2017. The Nature Protection Act was amendment was made, and for the very first time, there was written that the national parks in Czech Republic should have more than 50% for the protection of the processes. So that means that the nature should be nature. So after that, Šumava National Park Administration did the new zonation. That this zonation is up, cannot be changed up 2035, up to year 2035. But in these nature-like zones, the National Park Administration is not allowed to destroy the biotope. So even there, the management can decide if the bar beetle will be fight against or not. On the Bavarian side, in that time, the enlargement of the nature zone was almost done. They still had this 7 years, but because of the next enlargement that happened last year, the law was changed, and now already 75% of Bavarian Forest National Park is now without any intervention. So you can see here the nature zone, green, the buffer zone, and these red zones are recreation zones with visitor centers. So we somehow, people, visitors, even the politician can see that the bark beetle is not really a big problem for the nature. So now we are facing the new fear, and it's the fear of fire, and because a big fire happened last year, if you heard already, in Bohemian Switzerland National Park. So because it happened in the national park, now people are thinking, because of the dead wood, the fire is, the risk in the national park is higher than in the normal forest. So we will see how it will influence the national parks in Czech Republic. Another challenge that Bavarian Forest National Park doesn't have is the ownership structure. Bavarian Forest National Park, the whole national park is owned by the state. On the Czech side, about 10% of the forest in the national park is owned by 3 municipalities and some private persons. So it's also one thing that the administration has to deal with. Financing of the national park on the Czech side is a problem because more than 50% of the budget comes from logging. So it's somehow a paradox that, yeah, you have to cut the trees in the national park to finance the national park administration. On the Bavarian side, everything since 2014 is everything is paid by the state. And even if the national park administration collects some money, for example, for cutting trees in the buffer zone or for parking tickets, this money goes directly to the state. So Bavarian Forest National Park Administration gets the money for the state, and it doesn't depend on the logging. Yeah, the problem is also with our languages, so and with the language barrier. So we should do some infrastructure for both, for German and for Czech, and also in the field there is the problematic when our rangers speak with Germans, they don't understand Czech, or they do, or when Germans rangers are talking to Czech, so people who did something that they were not allowed, so they behave like they don't understand the language, not English, not Czech, not German. So this is a problem. So we have tried, and we are still trying to do some common patrols of common of our rangers. And of course, the identification of the local people with the national park is not the same on both sides of the national or of the border. What goals we have together? So it's enlargement of the nature zone on the Czech side. As I have already told you, Bavarian Forest National Park is already 75%. According to the new management plan of Šumava National Park, where it's written that there should be at least 52% nature zone in year 2036, and in 2060, 75%. But again, it's not like a law. We do not know if it will really happen or not. We would like to continue with our common bio and socioeconomic monitoring. One important thing is the common core zone. Again, on the Czech side, we have these small islands. On the Bavarian side, you can see almost 50% of the national park is a core zone where you are allowed to enter only on the market trail. But in 4 months, from July 15 to November 15, you are also allowed to enter another unmarked trails like this border trail or another trails, but only these 4 years in a year. On the Czech side, we have these small islands, but again, the National Park Administration is preparing a new zonation for the core zone that on the Czech side we call it quiet area, so like klidová území. So we will see in this year probably, or maybe next year, we will try to establish these core zones where the people will be allowed to enter only on market trails. Yeah, this is also both national parks administration would like to have some new cross-border hiking trails. So, for example, we were trying to allow people to go through the Lusen Valley to Blauen Säule, Modrý Slope, but we were not successful. We didn't succeed with this proposal. So at least we have these other cross-border market trails. So here, this is in this new part of the national park. Here's Bučina, the border between both national parks. And of course, because we have visitors from other countries, but also Czech people in Germany and German people in Czech Republic, we should try to have some common concept of information centers. Again, we were trying to get some money from the Interreg, but we were not successful. So now everywhere when we renew some centers, we are trying to do this in trilingual, but it's not easy every time, not only because of the cost, but also if you have to write something in 3 languages, you cannot have as many information there as we would like to have. So it must be some compromise between the information that you have there and with these 3 languages. And I think it's the end of my presentation. I thank you all for your attention, and I'm here if you have some questions.
Thank you, Pavel. Thank you for a comprehensive presentation. So now there is a space for your questions. Please indicate if you have a question indicated by raising a hand. This is in reactions on the bottom of your screen. I don't see any questions. So I have the first one. You mentioned that you have now a common goals for both national parks. Is there any international certificate on which it's based, or is it just an agreement between two national parks directorates?
Yeah, we have this like agreements between the administration, but like we do not have outside this boundary park certificate. We do not have any like agreement or contract that we will do it. So because it depends on money that we can get from other sources, we are not able to pay our the new exhibitions, for example, in visitor centers from our budgets. Yeah, so it's like more when we see some possibility where we can get the money, we are trying to go for it. So, like for example, with this Waldwerkstatt Lesní dílna, so where we got money, so that one part of the Hans Eisenmann house, the visitor center of the Bavarian side, was rebuilt, and on the Czech side, in Stožec, we got a new like classroom for children.
Thank you. So you are quite dependent on fundraising via projects.
Yeah.
Andrzej, you have a question?
Hello, Pavel. I'd like to ask about the ranger service in the Czech National Park. If you have some information about the organizational changes that took place in the past years several times. What is the reason for those changes that are unstabilizing the rangers in their positions?
I don't know if unstabilizing, but the problem is that in Šumava National Park, we do have less rangers that we should have. Bavarian Forest National Park, that is almost 3 times smaller, has the same number of rangers, and these rangers they are only rangers. On the Czech side, we have rangers who also are firemen and first help. These changes were made because we were trying to somehow reorganize this problematic between the normal ranger, between the ranger who is a fireman, and stuff like that. So nowadays we still do not have enough rangers for such a big national park, so we can concentrate only on some parts of the national park, mainly the parts where we have capercaillie and other sensitive species. So that is what why we are trying to do some changes. And also in the long term, we will not probably need as many foresters, because if the nature zone will be enlarged, then you don't need a forester there. So we would like to have that the foresters will become ranger, like it was done in Bavarian Forest National Park. So this area was, before it was a national park, it was established a national park, it was a Bavarian state forest, and the foresters, they could, if they wanted, became a ranger. So the first rangers in Bavarian Forest National Park were almost everybody, they were foresters. So on the Czech side, with this reorganization, we are now trying to increase the numbers of rangers that we have, because as I told you, even if the national park Šumava is almost three times bigger than Bavarian Forest National Park, we have the same number of rangers. So that's the reason.
Okay, thank you. I hope you will succeed with enlarging the number of rangers, and let's see if it happens. Thank you.
Hopefully, we will see.
Thank you. And I don't see any other question. So thank you all for your participation. Thank you, Pavel, for your time and for your effort to prepare the presentation. As you know from previous lectures, this presentation is recorded and will be uploaded to the YouTube channel of our project, so you will be able to share it with others or to look at it again. So thank you very much, all of you, and have a nice rest of the week.
Thank you too, and have a nice day. Bye.
Bye.
Thank you. Goodbye.